A glance in the mirror. Chapter 41, Lucky Break. Gradually Terry's life improved. He got used to walking the station to get the train to the Elephant and Castle. The journey home was wonderful, going to his own home, making up the fire with all his own things around him. The freelance work had to be finished, ready for the next edition, which wouldn't take too long. Then, perhaps Rebecca would be round to finish off her homework. That Christmas, 1981, was his first alone. Terry was very glad he had his own castle with the drawbridge raised. The wood fire lit up the room, with its dancing flames casting shadows across the wall. His new, second-hand black-and-white television held pride of place, a present received from the Harrow Lions Club. They were kind. And this was an addition that would certainly improve his home life compared to the previous Christmas. He hung up his paper decorations, fairy lights, and set up the tree. It was ready for Rebecca. Terry's home was all very cheering and snug. His dear neighbours were ever on hand with a welcoming cup of tea and a friendly word. This contributed towards his new feeling of well-being, feelings that gave him inner strength to support his original thoughts about not giving way but to hold on tight to his own self-worth. Further up the road, a young couple invited him in for Christmas drink. He was a builder, had his own business in company with his father, and they were building an extension to his house, which was similar to Terry's own, and naturally he wondered if Terry might be interested in building on too, installing a new kitchen, upstairs bathroom, and further bedroom. Terry looked over the plans and could see the potential, and agreed that their ideas and suggestions were reasonable and would make a considerable improvement. Terry told them he had no money, explaining how he was placed with his mortgage. They were astounded by the amount of interest he was paying. The wife immediately went round to another neighbour, who was invited in. He worked at the head office of Abbey National Building Society in London. He was shown Terry's figures and personal details, upon which he declared, "I can arrange not only another mortgage for the original sum, but an additional amount for the proposed extension, and this would save you £80 a month." How fantastic! What a splendid Christmas present! And good news! But how annoying he had been paying over the odds when it hadn't been necessary, all because he had relied upon a so-called friend. Eventually the plans were drawn up, planning permission granted, and a date set when the building work was to start. It was all very exciting, and gave him an enormous fillip. The Conservative government was planning a drastic reduction of coal, building more oil-powered generating stations. Pits were closed and productions were cut back. It was a planned assault upon the miners to reduce the power of their union. The miners went on strike, which resulted in hardship, poverty, violence and frustration. Thatcher demanded the industry to be self-supporting, a rational, if difficult, and unkind goal. The unrest continued. The period was termed the Age of Discontent, and how apt it was, and Terry knew exactly what it meant. Sexual freedom for women gradually underwent almost total liberation. Virginity was declared for all. It was recorded that almost 50% of females under 16 had admitted to an affair, that 26% of 21s claimed their first sexual experience before the age of 16. 30 years before, these figures would have seemed just about 5%. Having 3 daughters living in a household unsupervised in the evenings, these statistics were very worrying. At college, Terry picked up a magazine called Homes and Gardens, which advertised as part of its content a friends and partnership club for professional people. He cut it out. He carried this advertisement around in his pocket for a couple of weeks. Turning out his pockets one day, he discovered it, and finally, after much thought, decided to join the agency. Terry filled in their application form and waited for the results. He received his first 3 names and telephone numbers. Terry met all 3, but found they were all tense and uncommunicative, displaying great disappointment with the way of their own lives had worked out, and not wanting to commit themselves to another relationship. They were certainly not the sort of individuals he had in mind to either develop a lasting friendship with or to share an evening. Another 3 names were sent to him, and after picking one out, decided to write her a letter, setting out all his hopes and fears, what he was looking for, and how he wanted his future life to be. Terry continued painting the sort of life he had led, and wanted to get away from, how he had ended up feeling let down and nervous about starting a new relationship. Terry believed that life would be enhanced by sharing each experience. He sent the letter, not expecting any reply or telephone call. Within that first week, he had a phone call from somebody called Josephine, who lived in Tring, Hertfordshire, and she said she would like to meet up, and could he suggest a venue. Just opposite was a restaurant where always seemed to be an inviting place to Terry, and that answered every question, and he gave her a time and date. Josephine called, and they walked over the road to the restaurant and the previously booked table. Terry had never been to the restaurant before. In fact, he wasn't used to eating out. Josephine was 43, but looked 10 years younger. Terry 47, and felt that much older. Here was a sparkling 8-stone, 5'3", bubbly-haired, smiling extrovert, smartly dressed in a fawn-coloured trouser suit, who had been driving a pale green Toyota Bluebird with Elan, her parking perfect. This description referred to everything she did, how she based her life. The evening was a total success. Time stood still, as the story goes, and they got on famously. This sounds like some Hollywood musical, but that is how it was. That was not because Terry's life was so grotty that practically anything would bring sunshine to it, or that the fog of depression had dulled down the scenery, and life around him was making this moment appear in full technicolor, with an orchestra in the backing. Whatever, as you may well imagine, life suddenly took on a much rosier hue, and the Walt Disney songbirds flew around, chasing each other. Terry's letter had borne fruit, because what he had written had hit a chord, and it described exactly what Josephine felt, and was looking for too. Josephine Mittman, née Eason, was born in Hilton, St. Ives in Huntingdon, on the 27th of February 1939, to Harry and Eve Eason, née Martin. Educated at Nottingham, she was determined to make her mark. Her father was a lecturer in engineering, a committed Salvation Army captain, and tireless town councillor. Her mother was also deeply involved in the army and local good works, and brother Paul, a chemist, working as department head for Boots Pharmaceuticals. Josephine was going through her final divorce settlements, being married in 1962 and divorced in November 1980. The reasons were very similar to his own, except she was looking after 4 children, although they were at boarding school. The 2 girls, Helen, 13, and almost the same age as Rebecca, just a couple of days older. Anna, Josephine's youngest daughter, was 9. Both girls attended Sharman School, a fee-paying boarding school for girls, later be changed in the final year to coeducational. It was established near to Buckingham Town. Josephine's boys had attended the Dragon School, Oxford, their father's old school, and been offered and accepted a music scholarship at Aldenham School, Hertfordshire. Anthony, the eldest, was a piano and oboe scholar in his last year at school, finishing off his A-levels, and was almost 18. His younger brother Christopher, the pianist and trombone player, was 16. Terry and Josephine met regularly. He was getting to know the girls at Easter break, finding them charming, and after a couple of months it became clear to both of them that they were suited, and enjoyed similar goals and expectations from life. Terry gave her a key to the cottage, and by that gesture hoped it would show that he considered that they could make their friendship permanent. They often met at the railway station in London, and journeyed back home to Tring, planning their future. Josephine's home was a detached chalet bungalow called Tinker's Hay, that was perched at the top of Tring Hill, close to Tring in Hertfordshire, where Terry met the girls Helen and Anna, who on a regular basis had exits. They were fresh, keen and charming, naturally welcoming and unaffected. Terry slipped into their routine as naturally as if he had known them for years instead of for days. Terry did for them exactly what he had done for his own children, adaptable enough to quickly become conversant with their habits and special requirements. Josephine introduced him to her home help Florence and her daughter Iris. They were always so kind, providing him with a cup of tea and a slice of cake whenever we went to their house. He had never met anyone who cared for him so much. They were a wonderful couple of characters, whom Terry immediately grew to love for their own many kindnesses. He would never forget their graciousness and care. Josephine was working for Hill Samuel Merchant Banking Group. She had been with them for about a year and based at St. James's, London, in the Financial Services Division. Josephine had been prompted to apply for a position, and it had been accepted, working out of their London branch. It's not often that individuals start in a new career find out that they're very suited, but for Josephine she had found the job fulfilling, enjoyable and challenging to the extent that she became, within a very short period, one of the key workers of the group. She was a round peg in a round hole, and she was naturally interested in finance, how it can be managed and made to work, what it can provide and how it can be protected. Having run her own company, promoting its wares, engaging its staff and travelling extensively, probably knew more about average financial than the average financial advisor about practical money management. Terry soon took Josephine to Rita's to show her off, and they got on famously and chatted away as if they'd known each other for years. Rita was impressed and said so, as she still went round to have lunch on his half-days. Rita was fully conversant with what was going on. Terry picked Rebecca up at North London to take her back with him to her grandmother's. It was the only place that they could meet up which provided a warm, comfortable and friendly environment. It worked out very well. With his school holidays and working arrangements, Terry was on hand to look after Tinker's hay whilst Josephine was out. Being a financial advisor, she worked unsocial hours, visiting clients in their home. Terry took off her shoulders all the problems of the home, not just the cooking and cleaning, but the maintenance of the property and the girls too, when they had their holidays and weekend exeats. This allowed her to concentrate on the job in hand without having to worry about what was going on back at the ranch. The construction work was started on Leighton Cottage that summer, 1982, with an increased mortgage from Abbey National that had an interest rate of 6.5% instead of nearly 18% with the Guardian. What an enormous difference it was to make to him. He could now pay the children's maintenance and the loan. At this time the national figures of marriage breaking down was half of all the total of those marriages taking place. Splitting up meant a lowering of lifestyles to all concerned, probably one of the worst aspects Terry found after working so hard to build it all up. Now his children, receiving little or no pocket money, finding it very difficult to manage, making them feel underprivileged in front of their peers. Regrettably, Terry had not remembered to put pocket money into its rightful place. The media recognized there was a general lowering of moral behavior. Extramarital relationships were freely talked about. Dating agencies were used as pick-up points for sex and pre-marital relationships. There was a rise too in the taking of drugs as well as solvents, and an increase in sexual crimes. It was described as the upset society because all these disruptive antisocial habits came close together, rising up to over a 20-year period. These social changes, together with high unemployment and union unrest, stimulated a feeling of hostility towards management and business institutions, and this ultimately led to the Tebic Act in 1982, which restricted aggressive union behaviour, bullying when taking industrial action, making unions legally liable for infringements in their agreements with managements. What played into the Tory hands was the monumental increase in unemployment. Between 1981 and 83, there was 1.5 million reduction in trade union membership. It was to get worse. By a system of monetary policy, inflation at the same period fell from 18% to 4.5%. This downturn in national budgetary incomes showed itself in redundancies, and some of those laid off had large cash sums which needed investing. Here Josephine boosted her figures, supplying those needs. The court granted Terry a degree absolute in 1982, and with it he received the court's decision for a clean break, an arrangement that made the final break. Its stipulations outlined Sally to be awarded the property and contents, but only until the youngest child reached school-leaving age, full-time education or earlier by agreement. Terry was to receive 20% of the value of the property by valuation at the time of the payment was made. His payments towards Rebecca's education stopped when the insurance company started their payments to cover school fees. Sally also received a top-up from the school's welfare fund. The property mortgage was my responsibility, held by Provident Life, and ended fortunately the same year. Because Sally was in full-time employment with the local health authority on a rate paid for a senior medical secretary, Terry did not have to pay towards her maintenance. Josephine and Terry came to the joint decision that they would spend more time together. The girls applauded the decision. Terry soon became integrated into their world, visiting their school, talking to their teachers, and generally doing all the things that their father would do. They enjoyed the more even tenor to their lives, having a man about the house doing all the odd jobs and gardening, whilst enjoying a far happier mother. Meanwhile, Terry shuttled backwards and forwards to work using Tring Station, often meeting up with Josephine in London. It was a definite improvement to his life, to be going back to company, to be wanted. They all went camping as a foursome to Ripon and Durham, and the girls loved it, including using the communal wash-house and toilets. It was a miracle. Terry found his life a complete reversal to his previous. Now he was having fun, with happy, smiling faces around him. They all wanted him, and it was a great feeling.